welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking on one of physics' most enduring head-scratchers, the twins paradox.
It's an idea that, on the surface, seems to just break reality, doesn't it? It's a thought experiment about aging that makes you question everything you think you know about time.
Everything. And what's so compelling is that the classic scientific resolution, which is rooted in special and general relativity, well, it's mathematically perfect, but it just fails to satisfy our human intuition.
Exactly. You hear the answer, oh, it's the acceleration that makes the difference, and a part of your brain just still goes, yeah, but why? Why does just moving differently fundamentally change how a person ages?
Right. The paradox is resolved, but the mystery, that feeling, it persists. And it's exactly why we're diving into a stack of sources today that are built on a really radical theoretical framework. It's called mat physics.
And our mission today isn't just to re-explain the paradox. We're going to try to completely dissolve it.
Dissolve it. I like that.
Yeah.
And we do that by changing the most fundamental assumption of all. We're going to argue that the core issue is that we assume time is this passive flowing river that just carries everyone along.
We're basically shifting the entire axis of the question. We stop asking, how does motion distort time? And instead, we start asking, how does consciousness generate time?
And if that's true, if time is a rendered property of an observer, then the weirdness in the twins paradox, the asymmetry, it stops being about warped spacetime.
And it becomes a simple calculation of energetic cost. It becomes intuitive.
Okay, so let's ground ourselves in the classic setup. It's actually deceptively simple. We have our two twins, let's call them Terrence and Stella, born on the same day.
Terrence stays put, right here on Earth. He's in what physics calls a stable, inertial reference frame.
But Stella, she's the traveler. She boards this massive starship, accelerates to a huge fraction of the speed of light, travels to a distant star, and then, this is the important part, she has to turn around.
Right, which involves a second major acceleration and deceleration event. Then she comes home.
And the outcome, every single time, is the same. When Stella steps out of that ship.
She is physically, measurably younger than her brother, Terrence.
And this is where the paradox, or at least the perceived paradox, kicks in for most people. Because the heart of special relativity is that all motion is relative, right?
Exactly. So from Stella's perspective, sitting inside her ship, she could legitimately argue that she was the one who was stationary.
And it was Terrence and the whole planet Earth that zipped away from her at near light speed, turned around, and then zipped back.
And if that were true, if the laws of physics were totally symmetrical in that way, then Stella should have seen Terrence's clock running slow, and when they got back together...
Terrence should be the younger one. The whole thing should be symmetrical. But it's not.
It's not, and that's the apparent contradiction. Why isn't the aging effect symmetrical?
Now, the scientific community did resolve this decades ago. And the resolution is, it's really crucial. It's the difference between an inertial frame and a non-inertial one.
That's the key technicality. You see, special relativity only deals with constant velocity. Smooth, straight-line motion, those are inertial frames.
But the moment you want the twins to reunite, you have to have a turnaround.
And that turnaround involves acceleration. It's a non-inertial journey. And for that, you need general relativity. Stella, the traveler, is the only one who has to undergo these intense physical forces of massive acceleration and deceleration.
Terrence just stays on Earth. He's in an essentially stable frame for the whole duration.
That moment of acceleration, that feeling of being pushed back into your seat, that is the physical objective marker. It tells the universe that Stella's journey was the unique one. The one that broke the symmetry.
She feels the G-forces. Terrence just feels the normal, constant pull of Earth's gravity.
The math is absolutely robust. If you calculate what's called the spacetime interval, it confirms that Stella's path through spacetime is literally shorter. Less time elapsed for her. So, under the rigorous application of physics, the paradox vanishes.
But, and this is the core of our deep dive today, our sources suggest that while the physics solves the math problem, it doesn't solve the conceptual discomfort.
It feels like patching a leak in the roof without ever questioning the blueprint of the house itself.
Yes. The paradox only exists because we think of time as this external thing, this cosmic conveyor belt that just gets warped by speed and gravity.
And if you approach this from the Motet physics perspective, that very assumption that time is a flowing substance is the foundational error. We're going deeper than just saying clocks run slow.
We're proposing that time is an emergent property that's generated by the observer.
It's a perceptual construct built from the continuous process of sequential experience.
So the whole question shifts. It's no longer how fast does the universe's clock run.
The new question becomes, Why do we assume time is something that passes at all?
And this isn't just, abstract cosmology for the sake of it. Understanding how we generate time. It fundamentally changes how you perceive your own life, how you form memories, how you experience speed, even how you age.
If reality is actually made of discrete, rendered moments like frames in a film, then the rate at which you, the observer, generate those moments determines your own personal experience of duration.
The universe might have its own timeline, but your time is personal. It's something you create.
And that's what we need to unpack.
Okay, so before we can apply this logic to Stella and Terrence on their journey, we have to build this new architecture. We're stepping into what the sources call a consciousness-inclusive physics.
That's right. The argument is that whenever physics runs into a really persistent paradox, like the measurement problem in quantum mechanics or the nature of consciousness itself, it's a huge signal that one of our core assumptions is wrong.
At a foundational axiom error.
Exactly. We need to formalize a new set of axioms that reflect a dynamic, unified reality, not the sort of fragmented, clockwork objective view that always seems to break down at the extremes.
And central to this whole new foundation is the core principle of Mott. Now, you say Mott replaces entropy as the primary universal driver. I mean, that is a massive claim.
It's huge.
We're all taught that entropy, the tendency toward disorder, chaos, is the ultimate arrow of time. So what is Mott?
Well, Mott is introduced as the universal law of dynamic balance. So think of entropy as, the tendency for energy to just dissipate evenly. Everything spreads out, cools down, and you eventually get a static, featureless heat death of the universe.
The end of everything.
The end of everything. Mott says the universe doesn't actually tend towards stasis. It constantly seeks a state of dynamic equilibrium. It's a continuous rhythmic oscillation. It's the pulse that's necessary for life and complexity to even exist.
So it's not order versus disorder.
Yeah.
It's a cosmic engine constantly self-correcting.
Precisely. Balance in this framework isn't a dead stop. It's not stasis. It's a stable, self-sustaining limit cycle. The best analogy is a perfectly tuned pendulum, just swinging back and forth forever. It's completely stable, but it's always in motion.
And all systems are trying to find that state.
All systems self-regulate toward this energetic equilibrium, this dynamic balance, this mat field. It acts like a kind of template for all the physical laws, guiding systems toward the most energetically favorable pathways. And on those pathways, life and complexity can merge, which is the exact opposite of a universe that's just tending toward uniform dead disorder.
Okay, so if that's the primary law, this striving for balance, how does the universe actually operate? How is reality generated out of this state?
We arrive at what's called the dual engine model, and it's made of two things: science, which is represented by S, and beauty, represented by B.
Science and beauty. Now, these aren't just like philosophical concepts, are they?
Not at all. They are formalized, complementary, energetic currents, and you need both of them to generate any observable reality.
Okay, let's break them down. First, science.
S. S is the coherence and constraint operator. It's the force that generates structure, stability, order, logic, symmetry. It's the fundamental force that holds things together and dictates the rules.
So we would see that as things like gravity.
Exactly. Its physical manifestations are analogous to gravity, which pulls things into a rigid structure, or the strong nuclear force, which provides stability at the atomic level. It's the stabilizing, conservative, holding together current.
And its opposite, its complementary partner, is beauty, B.
B is the expansion and possibility operator. It's the force that generates novelty, creativity, evolution, and uncertainty. It's what pushes the boundaries of structure and introduces new possibilities into the system.
So in physics, this would be like quantum uncertainty, the randomness.
Quantum uncertainty, yes.
Yeah.
Or symmetry, breaking those moments when a system escapes its fixed, rigid structure to evolve into something new. B is the revolutionary, expansive, exploring current.
So reality is, as we experience it, is just the eternal tension, the dance between S and B.
Absolutely. Every single observable phenomenon, every star, every molecule, every single thought you have is a manifestation of a local deviation from perfect S equals B equilibrium.
A local deviation.
Yeah.
What would happen if S perfectly equaled B?
That state would represent perfect symmetry, perfect silence, perfect unconsciousness. There would be no time, no space, no separation. It would be a state of pure, unmanifest potential.
Wow. So life and everything we experience only exists in the rhythmic, dynamic oscillation, the constant dance of S trying to stabilize things and B trying to explore new things.
We are fundamentally the result of a necessary disequilibrium. You can think of the Big Bang not as a singular explosion, but as the first moment that S and B significantly separated from each other, which initiated the universe's long journey of trying to restore dynamic balance across vast scales.
Okay, this is a staggering new picture of the universe. So let's bring in the final piece of this new foundation, the observer. Where does consciousness fit into this flow of S and B?
Right. The model uses the symbol O, the observer operator, and consciousness is formalized as an active, causal, physical operator.
So not a passive witness, not just a ghost in the machine.
Absolutely not. Its function is essential to reality. It selects, it renders, and it integrates reality. Without an observer performing this act of selection, without attention and choice, reality just remains an unactualized, probabilistic field state. It's potential, not experience.
So O is physically doing something to this S and B field?
It is. The act of observation, of being aware, is the physical process that collapses all that potential into what we call material reality.
That's a huge leap. How does that work?
It works through a five-stage process we can get into, but the key is that the observer is the one performing the quantum snap, the moment of rendering.
And this brings us to one of the most wild claims in the sources, that the total reality we experience, our shared space-time, is the sum of all observers' compassion-weighted renderings. Okay, wait. I have to stop you there. This is where we seem to jump from physics to ethics. How can you have a physical operator that includes an emotional concept like compassion? Is there a mathematical definition for compassion-weighted?
That's a necessary challenge, and the framework addresses it head-on. Compassion isn't defined as an emotion. It's defined physically as the capacity for resonance restoration.
Resonance restoration, what does that mean?
It's the ability of two systems, two observers, for example, to synchronize their S and B oscillations, to align their phase. By doing this, they minimize the energetic cost required for both of them to maintain coherence.
So when I interact with someone with empathy, our systems are literally syncing up, which makes the act of generating reality more efficient for both of us.
Exactly. Shared reality, or what we call agreement, is a physical phenomenon. It's where multiple observers generate overlapping, synchronized reality frames. This synchronization physically reduces the total energy cost needed for the system to render that shared space.
And the opposite, dissonance, a lack of compassion.
Dissonance, fragmentation, a lack of compassion. These represent energetic resistance. It's wasted effort in the system. The oak operator is effectively weighted by its coherence, and coherence is maximized by this dynamic resonance.
So if I'm an observer and I lack empathy, if I'm creating dissonance, I am generating a reality that is fundamentally more energetically expensive for everyone involved.
That is the physical implication. A fractured reality, one dominated by high tension and lack of synchronized coherence, is a high-cost reality. And this concept, this idea of energetic cost, and how much bandwidth we have available for generating reality frames, that is the exact tool we're going to use to dismantle the twins paradox.
Okay, we've established the groundwork. Consciousness is a physical operator generating reality out of this tension between structure S and possibility. B, this forces us to completely redefine what time even is. If we are the generators, how do we experience flow?
Time in this model is defined as a perceptual construct. It's an illusion of continuous flow, and that illusion is generated by the sequential rendering and integration of discrete experiences.
So the feeling of smoothness, of duration passing, is just because we're doing this really, really fast.
Exactly. Like watching a film at 60 frames per second, it looks perfectly fluid, but it's actually just discrete still images snapped together one after another. Our reality is the same.
Okay, so let's zoom in on that snap. In quantum mechanics, we talk about wave function collapse. What is the active physical mechanism here?
That is the physical act of rendering, or the quantum snap. And it's performed by the observer operator, O. It is the moment that the infinite potential of the map field is actualized into a single defined reality frame that enters our shared spacetime.
And this collapse, this rendering, it isn't random. The sources say it's guided by two incredibly powerful causal variables, meaning and conscious intention.
Yes, meaning is formalized as a physical variable. It's not just a concept. It dictates the structure and the weighting of probability distributions. It literally biases the universe toward purposeful, semantically relevant events.
So if something has deep meaning to an observer,
that probability pathway is weighted far more heavily. It's more likely to be rendered. And conscious intention is the directional force that actively alters these fields. It's how we choose which potential state actually collapses into reality.
I need a more tangible example of this, especially meaning compression.
Okay. Imagine you're standing on a mountaintop at sunrise. You are being bombarded by a near infinite amount of sensory data, right? Air pressure, temperature, the sound of the wind, the specific wavelength of light from every single peak.
It's an overwhelming amount of raw data.
Your brain, your consciousness, doesn't render all of that raw data. It performs meaning compression. It collapses that near infinite input into one finite, powerful, and interpretable reality frame, the feeling of immense freedom and clarity.
Uh, so that feeling, that's the compressed frame.
That final compressed reality frame is what you actually experience and what you archive as your memory, not the petabytes of raw sensory data.
So the richer the meaning, the denser the resulting reality frame is, and the more energy was required to render it in the first place.
Absolutely. High meaning compression equals a high quality, high definition frame of reality. And this compression process, it happens via a 5-stage generative sequence.
Okay, let's walk through it.
First, there is potential. This is the unmanifest field state. All possible futures just existing in the mat field.
Then we have attention.
Attention focuses your awareness. It creates local coherence. It's like the beam of a flashlight in a dark room. You decide where to look, and that establishes the boundaries for the collapse.
Next up is intention.
Intention is the conscious choice, the directional force. This biases the probabilities within the field that's illuminated by your attention. You decide what you want manifest out of that field of potential.
And then the hard part, meaning compression.
This is the real work. The selected pattern stabilizes through this semantic, weighting, collapsing infinite information into a finite, coherent, interpretable order. This stage consumes the most energetic bandwidth.
And finally, materialization.
The chosen, compressed state becomes your experienced reality. It enters shared space-time and is now available to other observers. And this 5-stage process just repeats over and over, generating the illusion of time's flow.
Okay, let's go back to the geometry of this, because this is probably the most radical part of the shift.
Yeah.
If time is just the sequence of these rendered frames, then the fourth dimension can't be time itself. You're saying the 4D axis is something else entirely.
That is correct, and it is a complete restructuring of our geometry. The 4D axis is redefined not as time, but as the medium along which consciousness moves by rendering sequential reality states.
So we are physically moving along an axis, and the byproduct of that movement, the trail of frames we leave behind us, is what we call time.
Exactly. And the purpose of this axis is evolutionary. It provides the necessary distance between frames to convert unmanifest potential into lived, integrated experience.
And this movement gives time its direction, the arrow of time.
The arrow of time is not fundamental in this model. It's derived. The direction of time is proportional to the accumulation of integrated meaning.
We move forward because we integrate meaning forward.
Yes. If you stopped integrating new information, if every single frame you rendered was identical to the one before, you would effectively cease movement along the 4D axis. Time would stop for you, subjectively, even if external clocks kept ticking.
Consciousness moves forward because it's fundamentally an evolutionary accumulating force.
Your own identity continuity is the very substrate that anchors your timeline.
This has to have profound implications for how we see the past. If the past is just a previously rendered frame, how fixed can it really be?
It's not fixed at all. The past is not static data. It is a continuously updated rendered archive. Every time we integrate new meaning or gain a new perspective on something, our consciousness operator, retroactively performs a low-cost re-rendering of our previous frames.
So memory is literally a story we are continuously rewriting. It's not a video playback.
It's a living document. I mean, think about a traumatic event from your childhood. As an adult, you process that event with maturity, with context, maybe with forgiveness. The framework suggests that this new meaning weighting physically alters the stored memory archive. It updates the coherence and the phase alignment of that past event.
So you don't just feel better about the past.
You have literally rendered a more coherent, integrated past that is now guiding your present intentions.
Okay, we have the architecture. Time is generated by the observer. Reality is a cost calculation of balancing structure, S, and possibility, B. And experience comes in discrete, rendered frames. Now let's take all of this back to the starship.
Let's do it.
If the classical paradox is resolved by acceleration, the MAD framework resolves it with a physical cost function.
We collapse the entire paradox with one core solution. Time dilation is the measured result of a reduced consciousness sampling rate.
A reduced sampling rate. Stella experienced fewer rendered frames of reality than Terrence.
And the number of frames she missed corresponds precisely to the energetic burden of her high-speed journey.
Let's analyze Karen's first, the stay-at-home twin. He's our baseline.
Right. Terrence exists in a low-energy inertial frame. Earth is a massive coherence node. It's very stable in its local SB balance cycle. So he is rendering frames at a steady, low-cost baseline rate.
His consciousness engine is running efficiently.
Extremely efficiently. The local field is stable and structured. His system requires minimal energy to maintain coherence and integration. This allows for a high accumulation of subjective frames and integrated meaning. He's operating at the default low-cost frequency of reality generation.
Now Stella, the Starship pilot. She's experiencing near light speed, massive velocity changes, extreme acceleration. How does that translate into a cost function for her?
This is where we bring general relativity back in, but we reinterpret it. We interpret high speed, massive velocity, and acceleration as fundamentally S-dominant actions.
S-dominant, structure-dominant.
Yes. They prioritize structure, constraint, and directional coherence. When Stella accelerates, she is forcing her local reality frame, the ship and everything in it, into a rigid, fixed structure, high S, that has to resist the expansive uncertainty of the environment she is moving through at high speed.
The very act of accelerating her ship is fighting the mad field to impose a very specific order.
Precisely. Stella's consciousness rendering engine, her O operator, must allocate significantly more effort, just a massive amount of energy and bandwidth, simply to maintain her physical coherence, her structural stability, and the integrity of her reference frame, in a system that is undergoing so much distortion.
It's the physical equivalent of running incredibly demanding software in the background of your computer. It just eats up all the processing power.
That's a perfect analogy. The total processing power available to Stella's consciousness, her overall energetic bandwidth, is finite. If, say, 90% of that energy is being consumed by the task of just holding herself and her ship together,
then there's not much left for anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Less bandwidth remains available for the core task of generating new moments of consciousness.
So her frame rate drops.
Her frame rate plummets, and fewer frames rendered equals less subjective, integrated time experienced.
So she returns, having lived, subjectively, fewer moments than Terrence, even though the external chronological duration, the clock back on Earth, was exactly the same for both of them.
The universe is forcing Stella to pay an energetic toll for her choice to move in that way.
This is the elegance of it. We no longer need to invoke these complex mathematical concepts of space-time curvature to explain the asymmetry. The asymmetry holds simply because Stella's intentional high-energy act required a cost that Terrence, who remained in the default low-energy reference frame, did not have to pay.
It is the cost of choice. Terrence's choice was stability. Stella's choice was high-action transformation. The universe demanded a high-energy S-dominant investment for that transformation, and that directly impacted her ability to render new B-dominant moments of possibility and novelty.
Let's try to make this even more intuitive. Imagine that your consciousness engine needs, say, 1 unit of energy to produce 1 frame of subjective time.
Okay.
If Stella is just sitting still on Earth next to Terrence, the cost is low. So the frames are cheap and fast. 1 unit of energy, 1 frame.
But if Stella is accelerating at 10 Gs, the cost of simply maintaining physical coherence in that high S state is so high, maybe it now costs 100 units of energy just to stay in one piece.
Which leaves very little energy left over for generating the actual frame of experience itself.
So she is forced to render at a much slower rate to compensate for the massive overhead cost of maintaining her structural integrity. Time dilation is simply the physical symptom of resource allocation under extreme duress.
It's not that time is slowing differently for everyone.
It's that each observer is creating their time according to the energetic cost required to maintain their chosen state of being and movement.
The paradox is resolved. They aren't experiencing a time distortion. They're experiencing different rates of reality generation because they made different energetic commitments.
And that changes everything.
If the physics of starships and relativity is governed by this SB energy calculation, then this model has to apply directly to our daily lives, doesn't it? The sources call this a manual for being alive, and it explains why time seems to speed up or slow down based on our internal state.
Absolutely. The physics of personal experience is the most accessible proving ground for this whole framework. We can just transition the concept of rendering effort from extreme velocity to things like internal coherence and meaning compression.
Okay, let's talk about the common phenomenon of why time seems to speed up as we age. We hear it all the time from older people, that the years are just flying by now in a way they didn't in childhood.
And this is explained perfectly by the difference between novelty and repetition. When you are a child, almost every single experience is novel. Everything requires high rendering effort. Your O operator has to form new neural pathways. It has to actively oscillate between S trying to categorize the world and B experiencing all this new information.
That first week of summer camp, for instance, it can feel like it lasted for a month. Every day is packed with distinct, vivid memories.
That's because your system is running at a very high SB oscillation. It's compressing massive amounts of new meaning. The result is a very high density of rendered frames. Your subjective time is long and rich. The universe is paying attention to you because you are performing active, high-cost integration.
But once we settle into routine, the same commute, the same desk, the same low-stakes social interactions, that changes everything.
Repetitive lives are low-effort lives, energetically speaking. The system switches over to an efficient, cached render setting. There's very little delta action, minimal new information or meaning compression happening.
So the consciousness engine requires almost no energy expenditure.
And so subjective time speeds up. It speeds up because the system is generating far fewer new conscious frames per chronological unit of time. You're essentially operating in an automated simulation mode until a new novel event forces your engine back into active high-cost rendering.
So if you feel like your life is speeding up, it's not just a perception. It could be a physical symptom that you've stopped accumulating new integrated meaning. You're literally operating at a lower frame rate.
That is the core realization. The system grows not by expanding wider, but by aligning deeper. If you want your life to feel longer, to slow down, you have to introduce novelty and prioritize high-meaning compression activities.
Okay, what about flow states? When people lose all track of time because they're so deeply engaged in a task like an artist painting, a programmer coding, or a musician playing, time can feel like it vanishes. Or sometimes, paradoxically, it feels like a huge amount of work was done in a very short period.
Flow states are a prime example of achieving math, that optimal dynamic balance. The SB oscillation is perfectly aligned. You are imposing structure, S, through your skill and your intention, but you're also expanding possibility, B, through your creativity and execution.
This optimal resonance, it reduces what the sources call the internal tension index, or ITI.
And it maximizes the accumulation of integrated meaning without any wasted energetic noise or friction.
So you're rendering frames at maximum efficiency. They're incredibly dense, high-quality frames, but because there's no internal friction, the duration just passes seamlessly.
The output is maximized, but the cost, in terms of wasted cognitive energy, is minimized. You accumulate intense, rich, rendered frames without the friction that usually signals the passage of time.
Okay, now let's tackle the deep psychological implications. Let's try to ground the physics of our emotional states, specifically trauma and healing. You mentioned earlier that trauma involves high internal tension.
Yes, and a low capacity for empathy or resonance. This is where the MAT framework provides a powerful metaphor, if not a literal explanation. Trauma collapses time.
Collapses time.
It's defined as a moment when the incoming tension, the overwhelming physical and emotional data, exceeds the local system's capacity to integrate it. The feeling is simply too large to fit into your existing coherence model of reality.
So what does the observer, the O operator, do when it's faced with unmanageable tension like that?
The awareness is forced to split. It fragments itself to contain the overwhelming energetic charge. This fragmentation isolates the event, preventing its full integration into your main timeline. It's like your system puts that experience in a locked, encrypted, separate file.
And this creates a time collapse around that specific experience.
Meaning the past event is never truly past. It remains perpetually present because the framework, your story of who you are, has not been updated to include it.
That explains so much. It explains why trauma survivors often feel like they're constantly reliving the event, or why a simple trigger can instantly transport them back decades.
The time of the trauma is physically unintegrated. It's an unresolved frame. The energetic charge is still active.
So then how does healing work in this rendering model?
Healing is fundamentally resonance restoration, and it is the continuous re-rendering of the past. It involves bringing those fragmented parts of awareness back into coherent phase alignment with the present self.
How is that done?
We use powerful S-dominant concepts like logic, structured therapy, creating safety to contain the tension. And then we use B-dominant concepts like forgiveness, creativity, new emotional connections to expand the system's capacity for integration.
The sources describe forgiveness and love as powerful resonance restorations.
They are. They don't just feel good. They are described as physical coupling forces that realign the emotional field's geometry. They allow the past to be rewritten at the frequency of understanding and compassion. When you forgive, you reduce the energetic dissonance of that past event, which makes the re-rendering process possible.
This circles back perfectly to the ultimate conclusion about aging and the twins paradox. Stella aged less because her frame accumulation was reduced by her massive energetic expenditure on structure, on S.
And we, in our daily lives, age according to our own internal SB expenditure. Two people can live the same number of chronological years measured by the clock and accumulate completely different amounts of rendered time.
So one person might live 80 years, but spend 60 of those in low-meaning repetition. They would effectively accumulate the equivalent of, say, 40 years of lived, integrated experience.
While another person lives 80 years filled with novelty, high meaning, high SB oscillation, and deep integration, their subjective timeline is much, much longer.
That's right. Aging in this model is a direct function of the number of frames you've rendered and the meaning you've integrated. Experience, coherence, chronic stress, your internal tension. These things determine the literal speed and depth of your reality.
The person with a low internal tension index, who maintains their internal rhythm with coherence and integrity, they preserve their motion and their life with the least energetic cost, maximizing their subjective frame accumulation.
It's experience, not clocks, that truly ages us.
That's the takeaway.
So we started with this mathematical puzzle of Stella and Terence and the asymmetrical aging effect.
And classically, the answer is acceleration, the non-inertial frame. But through this Matlet lens, the resolution is conceptually so much deeper. Time dilation is just a measurable reduction in the consciousness sampling rate.
Stella aged less because her high-energy, S-dominant movement demanded so much of her finite energetic bandwidth.
That her rendering engine had fewer resources available for the job of generating new moments of consciousness. Simple as that.
And this just fundamentally collapses the notion that we are passive passengers, in a river of time, being dragged along by gravity or velocity.
We are not moving through time. We are actively generating time through experience and by accumulating integrated meaning. The fourth dimension is the medium that allows us to convert unmanifest potential into the reality we live. The arrow of time just points in the direction of our own conscious evolution.
It really is the ultimate shift in power. If time is rendered by us, then we are the authors of our own timeline.
The universe isn't ticking, it's breathing. Every single process, from a quantum fluctuation to the lifespan of a star, obeys this harmonic pulse of Ma'at. The oscillation between structure and expansion between S and B. Our challenge and our freedom is to tune our own internal rhythm to that universal pulse.
So we close with the core realization that dissolves the twins paradox entirely and returns all the power to the observer.
Time doesn't move forward. We do. And every moment of life is a new frame that we choose, we render, and we inhabit one heartbeat at a time. The depth, the speed, and the integrity of that reality are determined by our coherence, our intention, and our capacity for resonance restoration.
So for you, the listener, the provocative thought is this. If you want your life to slow down, if you want to accumulate more rich, lived experience, you have to prioritize novelty and coherence. You must actively reduce the energetic cost of repetition, increase meaning compression by finding purpose, and consciously tune your internal rhythm to the harmonic law of Ma'at.
The physics of the cosmos and the ethics of the heart are unified. True freedom operates only when structure and expansion remain in dynamic balance. The question is not how much time you have left, but how much meaning you are willing to render in the moments you create.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the structure of time. We'll see you next time.